Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Pump It Up, a Kentucky baseball podcast. A lot going on right now on the Kentucky baseball beat. Adam Luckett, Derek Terry here once again, and we're going to talk about it all tonight. There's a lot we got to cover tonight, Derek. There's been a lot going on with this baseball team. It's definitely not been a boring team to cover. I'm going to give them that. They have kept us on our toes all season. We're going to get into all of that tonight. But first, Pump It Up, as always, is brought to you by our friends over at Friends of Coal. Friends of Coal is dedicated to informing and educating Kentucky citizens about the coal industry and its vital role in the state's future. We provide a united voice for an industry that has been and remains a critical economic contributor to Kentucky. By working together, we can provide good jobs and benefits for future generations. Coal is resilient, reliable, and affordable. Friends of Coal is a volunteer organization. All are invited to be a part of our organization, which consists of proud Kentuckians as well as residents from beyond our borders. Head to friendsofcoalkentucky.org to learn more. All right, Derek. We're kind of at the point in the season where the midweeks are pretty much done now. So it's just weekend series and the same kind of pattern we've seen really since the Bama sweep played out, I think, this past weekend at Kentucky Proud Park. Kentucky rides a great pitching performance by Jackson Jelkin, gets just enough offense, maybe the moment of the year with a big walk-off granny, but has it teed up to go win another series, can't get it done, and then Sunday we see the late inning implosion. And so for you, what were your takeaways? Mine, just keep it as simple as possible. It's just like this just keeps happening. It's like we're watching the same movie, it feels like, here for a month with this baseball team.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with to start off on Friday. I did think that was the moment of the season. A 2-out, 2-strike. Was there 2 strikes for Van Cleve? Can't remember if it was 2
I think it was a
strikes.
2-2 count, yeah.
Yeah, so grand slam to win the game. A first career home run. I mean, what a moment. One you'll never forget if you're Braxton Van Cleve. And it felt like maybe that was going to be the spark that this team needed to get through the weekend. You know, you have the situation where, you knew going into the series just based on the probables that Cleaver was not going to be pitching on Saturday, or at least was unlikely to be pitching on Saturday since he wasn't listed. Jack Bennett gets that spot. Unfortunately, kind of more of the same, right? Very short outing. You end up having a bullpen game anyway. You're hoping to avoid that. Come up short in that game. Just an ugly game in the sense that both sides way too many free passes. You think about the inning that Vanderbilt scored most of its runs. I mean, UK aided in a lot of that, kind of vice versa. Both teams really struggled that game to drive runs in. The numbers are pretty ugly on both sides, and get a shot there in the ninth, climb back, get it within a run, and have the tying run on, but come up a little bit short. And then Sunday, we find out that Nate Harris is out, and Connor Madison actually gives a very good outing. Came in 5.1 innings, left the changeup up against Johnston there in his last inning to tie it, but he left the game in a spot that Kentucky could have taken that rubber match. And really unfortunate, I thought, for Kentucky and for Niall Adcock, just that whole sequence where you get the strike 3, Schwartz, and I never saw a replay on it, but Schwartz either couldn't block it up or it was too much of a wild pitch to where he just couldn't get it. I wasn't really sure. I couldn't tell from where I was sitting. And lo and behold, the 9-hitter who's not hit a home run in his entire career, no doubt grand slam. I mean, crushed it. Got it to a full count. Hits the grand slam. And even then, though, Luckett, I mean, they climb back into it. Once again, get it back down to, I believe it was a 1-run game, 7-6. Is that right? And then in the 9th,
that's right,
the bullpen just lets it go again. And you give up 6 runs there in the top of the 9th. I think it took like 40 minutes to play the top of the 9th. A lot of pitching changes, as we've seen in some of these other outings. And the game's effectively over at that point. And you leave, I think, feeling pretty rough about kind of where things stood with just how that Sunday game closed out.
Yeah, and it felt like, it's hard to get out on too much, but it felt like you kept – Madison gave you 5 one-run ball. It felt like that was the time to maybe pull him. try to keep him in for another inning. Boone gave you two scoreless.
Yeah.
I think that was his longest outing of the season. So you got Madison at his longest, Boone at his longest, and it felt like just went a little too long there. And they kind of, it felt like I thought both of those frames, like they would be someone different coming out there. I thought for the 6th, they would go to someone, and I thought for the 9th, they would go to someone else. They decided to roll. But that's, I think, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't in a lot of ways, because then you got to go deeper in the bullpen. So you might as well press your luck with something that was seemingly working. And I'm with you. I think the Friday night game was really frustrating. Joking was great. You felt like that against that Vandy staff that they were facing, they should have been able to score some runs against them. And they just kind of sputtered around all night, and then finally got into the 9th, hit the grand slam. It was a great crowd. I think that was probably the best crowd they had all year. And I tweeted it out in the moment. That just feels like, they hit a rough patch. Just feels like something that could get them out of it. A win like that, and then less than 24 hours later, it's in the same, you're in the same movie again, really, right? Second inning, you're getting a big hole. And then that has kind of repeated itself kind of in these next 3 games. Last 3 games we've seen, they get in the hole, kind of climb back in it. But then, like, as the game gets into these late innings, the bullpen just can't hold up. And you had a chance to potentially win all those games if you can get them. The bullpen could give you a couple of zeros or even a 1 in the late innings. And they weren't able to do that on Saturday, Sunday, or then this past week against Louisville. And now they're riding a 3-game losing streak. I think this is the biggest losing streak they've had all year. They're 2-5 in their last 7 ball games. And so they're scuffling here right now. I think pitching has a lot to do with it. I think the defense is taking a step back here last couple weeks. It was a rough night against Louisville here on Tuesday for the defense. And then you add all that up, and I think the lineups actually came alive here. This is a nice little stretch they're on, but they're scoring runs, and it's not enough just because it's hard for them to put together 27 outs right now. It just is what it is.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about the offense. I mean, you think Friday was really the worst of the offensive games in terms of, they still got the 5 runs they won. That's the last game they won was Friday. Sunday was not great either necessarily. They just really weren't hitting it that well. It was another game where a lot of the runs came via just, quite frankly, bad pitching from Vanderbilt. But if you want to give any kind of credit, it's, being patient, not helping them out when they're trying to work themselves into trouble. Last night that was a solid offensive night. I know Louisville's pitching staff's pretty rough too, and it's a midweek anyway, so you're going to expect fewer decent arms to be out there. But cranked out, I think, 12 hits, 3 home runs. Like, we starting to see some long balls. I don't know if it's with the weather getting a little bit better or what, but Van Cleve has helped in that category. I mean, he's started the last 4 games. He's got a hit in each of those games, a couple of home runs now. Hindle, no doubt, home run last night, big shot there.
Schwartz both, yeah.
Schwartz is towering. I mean, I did that ball super high into the air, out to left field. And I wrote my column this week. I wrote yesterday that I still felt, even though they're really trying to still find the right combination of guys out there offensively, just with players being in and out of the lineup. Obviously, we talked about Hudson last week. He's been out now. I guess he's not played since before the last Louisville game. I think Missouri might have been the last game he played in.
Missouri,
Sunday.
Sunday against Missouri. He's missed Louisville. He missed the Auburn series. He missed the Vanderbilt series, and he missed two Louisville games and 2 SEC series. So he's up to 8-game absence right now.
Yeah, and really no clear return date for him either. So, if I'd have told you before the season Will Marcy was playing first base, I mean, how many scenarios do you think you would have had to have gone through before you got there? I mean, that was not a guy that I ever saw playing. I know he played there previously in college, but in all the times, I mean, I think either myself or someone from my staff was at just about every single fall scrimmage, and he was never over there. So that's just where they are, though, at this point in the season. Will is not like knocking the cover off the ball, although, I thought he had a pretty good weekend, all things considered, against Louisville or against Vanderbilt. But, like, he gets on base.
Right,
You know,
right. That's where I'm at with him. I know there's a lot of frustration. Like on our board, there's a lot of, Marcy's, he's been under 200. He just got above that after the Vanderbilt series. But a lot of that. But then you look at the OBP, it's 350 to 400, I believe.
Yeah,
kind
he
of
got
in
on
between that all year. So, yeah, that's why he's playing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, should he be hitting cleanup? I mean, anybody can debate the lineup, you know what I mean? But, he's getting on base. He got on base 4 times against Vanderbilt and in that finale. And I still would have a little bit higher hopes. I think the offense, I was surprised whenever I went into the numbers in the SEC and they're 3rd in on base percentage in the whole league. So they're doing a good job getting on base. A lot of that is they lead the league in hit by pitch. They draw a lot of walks. They're not going to like outslug you, really.
They've got a lot of like mid to high 300 hitters too at the top of the lineup too. I mean, that just, you kind of add it up. It kind of makes sense, and then you consider some of the on base percentages. So I'm not surprised necessarily by that.
They just had a hard time getting them in. It feels like it's they're patient. And if a team against I think on paper when you look at like that Vanderbilt series, I really feel like Kentucky should have won it. With how bad which it's really was probably a battle of 2 of the worst pitching staffs in the SEC, unfortunately, at this point in the season. But at home, with how much Vanderbilt staff was probably going to be able to help you out, it kind of felt like it fed into what UK is pretty good at, and just not enough. Way too many guys left on base. I think it was 16 on Sunday, and it was 11 the day before. So just the inability to come up with the big hit. That's been a theme for this team, though. It wasn't just this weekend. In a lot of their losses, it's been that way. So I still think, though, if you keep getting on base the way that they are, I like your odds of eventually breaking through. I think that's something to build on. And unless that just falls off, I think this offense can still be competitive. And I know we're going to get into it later, but I just don't know where they turn on the pitching staff. This is as bad of a situation as I feel like they've had in 3 or 4 years. And I'll save the rest for when we pull up the numbers. But to me, that's kind of the state of, they're here. It's here. Okay.
We can get into this right now. We'll do this now, and then I do want to talk about Van Cleve and talk about some of the lineup and the injury stuff. But yeah, Derek, you can take this away. This is your. You can throw that back on there, Peak. This is your. This is your work here. So you got the mic. You got the dance floor. Go ahead.
Yeah, for people who aren't watching on YouTube, this is just this is from D1Baseball.com. It's the advanced stats for the pitching and conference only game. So this was looking at the 18 games that they've played in the league. I think I had this sorted by OPS. Yeah, that's just what I had it clicked on at the time. Just if you look at this, it's almost unbelievable. How many pitchers?
Staggering was the word that came to mind when you first sent me this, and I was going through some of this data.
It really, whatever advanced analytic you want to look at. Of course, like OBP, slugging, OPS. I think most people who follow baseball, just in the traditional sense, will know what all those things are. They have 2, 4, 6, 7 pitchers here with an OPS over 1,000. The on-base percentages are extremely high too. And some of these pitchers, Berkeley Bounds right now is leading in this category. He's not really thrown that much since conference play began. So there is small sample in some of these guys, but not everybody. Some of these guys are mainstays. Leighton Harris has pitched a lot. Connor Madison obviously just kind of became potentially a weekend starter, depending on what's going on with Lever, depending on what's going on with Nate Harris. Jack Bennett's in there, Susie. So you can see a lot of the main names. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you see all these numbers, I know it's a little harder for people who maybe are listening to this on podcast. The general takeaway here is that, the numbers are just so inflated for so many different guys and in whatever category. Like, it's hard to even kind of cherry pick a good category, right, for these guys. Mm-hmm. So I'll turn this to you, Luckett. You're managing this team. You're in that dugout. Where do you turn when you see numbers like that? And you
what one of my first thoughts were? I was like, hey, Ryan Schwartz is down here at the bottom. Can we get him an inning or two? Let's try that out. I'm like, he can go from catcher to pitcher. It can be an old little league, switcheroo. Yeah. They don't like. I was talking to Jeff Drummond last night, and I was telling him because he was sending me some numbers that I should probably read off here, just about like some of the walks. This was the sixth time in the last month that they've had 8+ walks in a game. It's the fourth game where they've handed out 10+ walks. This was against Louisville on Tuesday night. But we were talking about, it just feels like they're just like, it's like walking inning. It feels like it's what you go into every inning knowing like over 9 they're going to give out a walk per like and change. It's just a hard way to go about it, and it just feels like, Derek, it's almost one of those things where it's just like we just don't have it this year. We just don't have it, and can we just piecemeal it together enough and then get through the end of the year and then figure out like how do we fix it? Because I think there's a lot of factors, I think, with this pitching staff, and there's not really like, we've seen Harris miss a start, but it's not really injury. Like, they've had all these guys available, ready to go. It just has not, it just never clicked. It's never clicked for them for whatever reason. And they kind of got caught sliding downhill, and they just haven't been able to stop what feels almost like an avalanche to this point.
Yeah, when I was thinking earlier, kind of what I was wanting to get out of this episode tonight, points I wanted to get across. I think it's easy because it has mattered a great deal. Ben Cleaver,
Absolutely. It starts
not
there.
even. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge, one of the biggest storylines with this team, I think, and specifically the pitching staff and the struggles. If you even got 70% of what Ben was last season, you're still looking at a pretty strong 1-2 punch between Jelkin and him on a Friday and a Saturday. That's, a worse version of him, even a reduced version of whatever he was last year. Unfortunately, he's essentially a shell of what he was last year. He's finally got removed from the rotation last weekend. They give him the start last night. Still goes 1 inning, throws 33 pitches. I don't know that it's going to happen for him, but I don't want to pile on Ben specifically, because if you think about it, who stepped up? Who else on this rotation, has really seized an opportunity, and you could look at and say, yes, they're deserving to get into the rotation and have a shot to do it. We talked about Madison going into that game. I'm not sure I would have said, he's kind of like next man up because he has some experience doing it. Like, he threw a pretty good game. Like, he threw a game to the point where I'm like, yeah, let's see a little bit more out of this guy, just based on how the rest of the staff's going. I think he's earned another start. So to me, the disappointment is in, not only how his season has gone, but it's felt like they've really not been able to have anybody that even beyond that you would look at and feel very strongly about. You knew going into the season, the bullpen was probably the number one question mark, but I think it would have been hard to predict it going as poorly as it has, just to be completely honest.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think it really, like, when we do our kind of like season recap episode here after the year's over, first thing we're going to talk about is just the Cleaver situation. This was a guy they brought out at media day, preseason All SEC selection. A guy they were counting on to be a really focal point. So, but we even talked about this in the preseason, Derek. There are some people that, they were handicapping from a national lens, were a little skeptical on Kentucky because Cleaver didn't necessarily, that he doesn't have the best stuff, and then may have gotten away with some, that was just, I think, the thought that people that maybe weren't as high on Kentucky in preseason top 25s. And I think we've seen that maybe play out a little bit, honestly, because he's not been able to find it this year. And you look at it, and I sit here thinking, well, it would be like, man, if you had last year's Cleaver and this year's Jelkin together, that's a heck of a 1-2 punch. But let's play that out. Play that simulation out. You get that. I think we're still having conversations about this team being frustrating because the bullpen it still would have had issues. It still would have probably lost some games. There still would have been situations on the weekend where things just got ugly for him. And for the bullpen, it just feels like no one's really outside of Niall Adcock. I do want to signal him out because he's become a real guy. for them. But outside of him, it's felt like no one has just like really stepped up and taken a big role. It's just all been kind of, we don't have any answers, I guess is the best way to put it. And it's a tough place to be for you. It's a tough place for your lineup. You just know, like, and it wears on you, I think, on defense. Like, I wonder if like some of the defensive miscues we've seen, it's just hard. Like, it's just like come out, get a lead, hit a couple bombs, and it's like, or we get 7-8 runs, and it's just hard for them. And it's created, I think, a situation where they're just really they're in a rough patch right now, and they're trying to scuffle and get out of it, but it's hard to get out of it because the pitching is they just don't have enough arms. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, you go through those numbers, and they've tried all kinds of guys, right? Like, they've tried
19
everyone.
pitchers. Yeah, I did a quick skim, and go ahead.
It's not just a volume. I just mean like different roles. Okay, we're going to try Jack Bennett late in games. We're going to try Madison in different spots. Berkeley Bounds, we're going to see what he can do late in games. On and on and on. And it's just, you're just trying to find that right mixture. And may at some point, it just feels like you're probably the pieces aren't going to add up this year, and you got to figure out how they will add up better, I guess, next year.
Yeah.
What's the season?
You mentioned, kind of want to talk about some of the good things earlier. They did have a couple of pitchers, I thought, in Saturday's game. Jack Sams, freshman from Lexington Catholic, gave a career high, three innings there, struck out 4. And then Tristan Hunter. I talked about him. It was either last week or the week before. It might have been the week before. Might have been a couple of weeks ago. He was another one, came in 3 innings. Both those guys gave them career highs. No runs allowed. So, we mentioned in that Saturday game, they got a big deficit there early. Those two kept them in it, gave them a chance to come back. I think Tristan has moved into – he's thrown 7 innings now in conference play, still not giving up any runs. That graphic earlier that we saw, I have it pulled up here on my computer. He's the one that even like the advanced stuff maybe doesn't like – it's not like in love with them necessarily. But out of a lot of these guys, a FIP of 4.31 is not too bad compared to a lot of these other guys on here. He's got an expected FIP of 5.31. His issue is, and what I think he deserves probably a bigger role at this point, just based on what we've seen so far. He is living dangerously, though, with the 20% walk rate. That tells me that over the longer run, you're not going to be able to survive with that. Like, he's not keeping that 0 ERA for much longer if, this stays the same. However, he does not get hit around. In the, I think, 7 innings he's pitched, he's holding opponents to, I think it's like a 167 average in the league. And he struck out 30% of the batters he's faced. So, he can strike out SEC hitters. And there's not a ton of guys on this staff, to be frank, who can. So he's still, a work in progress. Again, the walk rate, it's actually not the worst out of the guys that they use. Ryan Mullins at 23.1%. Leighton Harris is at 21%. So Tristan's just under that. I'm kind of ready to see a little bit more of him moving forward. And then Sams, he was interesting because he was not a big recruit.
He's been aggressive. To me, like, he's been aggressive, and he's attacked the zone. Now, it feels like eventually it's going to get put on him a little bit, but they might need some of that because part of the issue is they're just not throwing strikes.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well, Jack is a local guy. I mean, that was, even within his signing class, his teammate Owen Jenkins was, a far more established recruit than he was. But you look at his numbers in high school, and I know it's 11th region baseball in Kentucky. For the state, it's not bad, but it's one of the, outside of the Louisville regions, it's probably the best ball being played in the state. He had very good numbers, and you don't really know how that's going to translate necessarily, but it's like nobody around here hit him his senior year of high school. So I think they were excited about him in the fall, but I'm not sure he was someone that, in their mind coming into the year would have been, and he's not been like a critical piece. I mean, he's hardly thrown in the SEC, but it seems like every time he does throw, he does pretty well. And whenever you watched a lot of these other guys scuffle, I guess that's something I'll be watching for this weekend at South Carolina. And it's different going on the road. It's not, prime South Carolina team that you're going to see, but it might be time to maybe see what he's got the rest of the way. And they've tried it. Toby Peterson, he pitched again last night.
What's okay.
Yeah, he is fine. We've really not seen Will Coleman at all. He's not shown up on any injury reports, but
He was
he
warming
seemed
up
like
last night at different
was he?
times. So yeah.
Okay. For whatever reason, he's just not been used in SEC games. So yeah, I just think when you look at these numbers across the board and you kind of think about what Tristan and Jack did this weekend, it might be time to maybe see what they can do in a little bit bigger setting. But I asked Minjion about those guys Sunday after the game, and he did mention, and I think it was certainly correct, that they've really eased Jack Sams into it. Like I think they've used him in spots where they. I mean, it was like 7-1, I think, when he entered the game the other day.
Right.
I mean, like these are spots that the game's not necessarily on the line, and
low leverage situations.
Yeah,
yes.
So it's always a risk if you to an extent. Did you see that with Berkeley Bounds? You know what I mean? Like he was someone who was very good early, earned a bigger role, and then probably wasn't ready for it. But that's kind of the only way that you find out is by doing it. So, if you're looking for any positives, I think from the staff outside of Jelkin, as you mentioned, who anytime he's out there, I mean, they got a chance, and that's I think the big picture moving forward. It's the one good thing, but man, it puts a lot of pressure on you on Friday to win that game.
Right. Yeah. Right. I look at Hunter, and I think you're right. I was joking about Schwartz, but like obviously, like he's next up. Like he has like. I think he's earned. Let's see what he can get. But it had the walks. What worries me, just the walks.
Yeah, you could see. Yeah, you can see
a
scenario
when he's on, he's good. But you can see a scenario where he can't. Poor batter's face, walked in a run, and then you're just in a. And then that's where they get in trouble a lot. I think all year it feels like every inherited runner scores. Like it feels like they can't get out of any of those jams. So it almost feels like to me, can you just ride the guy and then let the next guy come in and get a clean slate? Because it's just that's been an issue, at least in my opinion, pretty much all season. But I do think you've just got to I think these next two kind of weekends, you just kind of got to give Hunter some real opportunities and see what he does with them at this point. I think it's you're on Jelk and Adcock on Fridays, and then seeing if Hunter can giving him some big Saturday or Sunday opportunities. I think that's what you got to do. And with Sam's, I just, I agree with that. I think he's been a pleasant development, but I don't know if they're ready to really kind of throw him out there. For you, Derek, just like going back to like your preseason prognostication with this bullpen, what do you think is like what is maybe one thing, or if you had to put it in a big a one bucket, like what has gone wrong with just like, I guess, the bullpen plan and execution of that plan?
I don't think any of their back end guys that they kind of penciled in there have been very good. I don't know that Bennett was originally supposed to be a closer. I think he's been the Swiss Army guy. It helped that he was a Friday night starter at Western, but I think Ira Austin was a bit of a gamble. Like he really was kind of a specialist. Like he's kind of got a lot of funk. That's what we talked about before the year. He had closing experience in the Southland, I think is the league he came from, down there at New Orleans. But he struggled. He had a bad outing last night. Came in, gave up a home run, immediately walked two more guys. And that's kind of the thing about last night's staff, the bullpen. It's like, yeah, some of these guys really aren't going to be counted on in SEC games, but like half the guys they used are guys that get innings in SEC games. And to Louisville's credit, that's a very good lineup. Really, I shouldn't say, I'm not speaking for you necessarily. I probably should have given them more credit for how well they did throw in Lexington.
Absolutely. That was one of the best performances of the season. That was their best pitching performance, I think, of the season.
Yeah. So, in a midweek game like that, it's not surprising that Louisville was able to, rack up the runs there. But, Mullen was coming off injury. I feel like they've never – the one thing I remember talking to some people in college baseball outside of UK before the season began, back in the fall when I was going to it, I told them the impression that I get, I'm a little concerned it's a little too much. I'm saying we in general, it's like UK, like they need Mullen, Alderman, and the other – who am I forgetting coming off injury? Oh, Oliver Boone. Alderman, and Mullen, all three guys who are coming off injury. It's like it feels like there's more of, they need them to be good versus it would be nice if these guys were good. So it did feel a little short staffed potentially. You've not seen a ton. I don't think there's been a huge leap for many of the guys in the program. Like Leighton, I would say Leighton would probably tell you it's not been a great season for him. When you go look at some of those numbers. And Sunday, I didn't think he got hit around that hard. I thought his line was a little worse than what it looked like in reality. He had, they had the infield in at one point. I think the alignment on defense on one of the other hits was not the normal alignment. And it's just like he didn't get crushed, but it's still those stats we were looking at were season long over the conference, and it's just not been great for him. He had a really good summer last summer. I think everybody was hoping he would take another leap, and so far we've not really seen that. But it's not just him; it's a lot of guys. You couldn't account for this Cleaver situation before the season, and that's having a trickle down now with the bullpen, where they've, there were no good contingency plans.
It's bare minimum 6 more innings a week, and they have to cover that they probably weren't thinking they were going to have to cover. Now I think Jelkin has risen up where he's taken away some of those innings, but it's a chunk of innings. It's double-digit outs, bare minimum per weekend that they probably weren't expecting to have to cover.
Jelkin's turned out, I know there have been guys before that have come through the program that people are like really excited about, and sometimes it doesn't work out. He is one who, at least in my opinion, he's turned out to be better than I thought he was going to be.
Good, yeah. It's hit to its max. You thought good hit.
This is not like this team is. I'm not necessarily doing a direct comparison here because this team is much better than the 2019 team at UK. But based on how poor the rest of the staff has been, this feels a little like Zach Thompson 2019-ish, where he's so much better than the rest of the guys on the staff, and it just shows up every time that he pitches. Nate was a trickier one. I think he's been competitive. This is probably more over the long term, something we can talk about once the offseason gets closer, and we'll have to see with his injury, if
what's going on there.
So he missed a start. Hopefully for his sake, he's able to get. They need him. Everybody needs him back. I'm sure he wants to pitch. He's done fine. I think Nate has. The question I have though, and probably what we'll talk about with him at some point is like, has he shown enough to where you feel like he could be a frontline starter next year? And to this point, I don't know. So, and those are hard to find in the portal. Like Jelkin is a rarity that you're able to get somebody like that at Kentucky to come in. So, I know you asked about the bullpen, but I just think it's all kind of collectively built into a spot where you see what Madison can do for you when he started a game where he was able to give you over 5 innings. But when he's coming out of the pen, we've not seen that a ton yet. So like you could see it if you were able to use him as a bullpen guy for the majority. But when I asked you earlier, I was kind of being facetious, but seriously, like I think you can see kind of the problems they have as, if you're Dan Roselle or you're Nick Mangione and you're trying to work through these weekends, it's like, where do you turn? I don't know. And
that's why, like, back to my point about, I thought they might have kept Madison in too long. I thought they might have kept Boone in too long, but it's very much a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because I get why they did it. You have to put them in, put yourself in their shoes. I thought personally, just watching the game, it was time for them to go. But then also, I knew if I was there, I would probably because where do you turn if you take them out? Like, it's not like it's easier said than done, because you rather ride something that's working in game than turn over to something that maybe hasn't worked really this season. It does feel like there's a lot of, like, they were banking on a lot of guys coming off injury, and maybe that was just a couple, 1, 2, 3 too many.
I think the other frustrating thing, if you take it into the context of last season and then the offseason build, I think there was a sense that the pitching also let them down last year. If you think about how their season ended against West Virginia, it was kind of the same deal where they gave up a ton of runs. I think they lost 13-12 in that, in the final game of that Clemson regional. And it wasn't great all season. But now when I look at it, Cleaver gave them a great season last year. Nick McKay is the number 2 last year. I think has been better or was better than what we've seen from a number 2 this year. which I would not have expected before the season began. I would have probably bet pretty heavily that Ben Cleaver or Nate Harris would at least be able to match what Nick did, if not be honestly significantly better. And then, the season that Nate gave you, I'm looking at this now and I'm thinking last year's rotation was certainly better than this year's. And the bullpen, was probably better last year too. And, we've not even talked about Tommy Skelding. He finally pitched last night. He hadn't thrown since the Auburn series. And he was one that I think had really high hopes coming in and just hasn't. He's walked a lot of guys as well. It just feels like almost like a perfect storm. And I think the track record that Dan Rozelle has here is very good. He has consistently developed, I think, really strong pitching staffs of guys that have not gone on to pitch in the big leagues. The guys who, he's gone up against a lot of teams in this league where just the natural talent was better against other teams. You think about even like the 2022 staff, that team didn't make the tournament. They were very deep as a staff. 2023, same deal. I mean, they were able to battle out of these region, that regional in Lexington when they lost a game. This team, I feel like they'd have no chance if they lose the game that Jelkin started, in a hypothetical regional. So they've had better outings, and I think you got to default to him that he's got a really good track record as a pitching coach here. And for this year, it's not come together. And when I think about the big picture, it's what I wrote about Monday, that this season's kind of at a crossroads. It feels like metrically they're still hanging in there. They were a 2 seed, which surprised me at D1 baseball, the last 2 seed, and then they're a 3 seed at Baseball America. Tells me if the season ended today, they're in. But it feels like the trends and the vibes of this season, like this, it can't be overstated, I think, how important these 3 games are down in Columbia this weekend. If they drop 2 out of 3 here, it seems tough to me to think that they're going to be able, even though I know Arkansas's not having a great year, I know Tennessee's not having a great year, I feel like those teams are more talented than Vanderbilt. I think they're more talented, certainly, than Missouri, who Kentucky's lost the series to. I think they're better than this South Carolina team that they're going to see. So they have a chance here. If you can at least win 2 out of 3 and be at 10-11, I think you still feel good. But if they lose this series, I don't know. And that's just on top of all the health stuff, not really knowing what's going on with Nate. Well, we know what's going on with Nate, just not knowing if he's going to be able to get back, and not knowing Hudson. I mean, I don't know what you can even expect if he does get back. He's missed, what'd you say, 8 games or whatever it's been now, right in the heart of the season.
I think that's what it's up to. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't even know what you could expect, which is really just rotten luck because he was having a great year, and they've felt that loss. So I don't know what you have to add on there about this series, but that, to me, that's where they are. For the first time, I feel like they're actually at a spot that this could start to trend in the wrong way, in a way that could have a postseason effect. I think some of the Missouri losses, the series losses, like kind of frustrating, but it's like, well, there's so many series left that you can kind of overcome this, but you're starting to run out of series now at this point.
Yeah. You're in a rough patch that's gone on probably like 2 weeks longer than you thought it would, or you were comfortable with it running on. I do want to get into kind of, right, Hudson Brown out of the lineup, what we've seen from them and what we could see and what they need to like really click here. Cause let's face it, they're going to need to score some runs to win some baseball games. But first, we are thrilled to have our friend Andy Ludicky sponsoring our baseball coverage this spring. He is a big baseball fan, and from his line of work, he has seen firsthand the fantastic traits that baseball players bring to the franchise world. Are you sick of your job? Ready to leave the corporate rat race? Want to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy? Have a job and want a side hustle? Andy can help. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, passions, and financial requirements. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. Head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, or you can text Andy at 404-973-9901. The Brown development really is tough. Was having a really good year at the plate. Had been Mr. Reliable in a lot of ways for them on offense. He had the huge series, I thought, against Alabama, really played a big role in Kentucky winning that series. He had a really good series, homecoming series, I thought, against Ole Miss. Just not having him in the lineup has been tough. And you've seen like kind of a weird thing they're doing at first base. But I do Now, these last two, it's come against bad pitching staffs. I'm just going to say that with Louisville and Vanderbilt. So grain of salt. But I don't want to just sleep on the Braxton Van Cleve we've seen. I think, and even Ron Schwartz in a smaller sample size, Schwartzfield is getting, I feel like he's getting more comfortable in the box. Baseball, football, basketball, basket weaving fashion. Is there anything Adam Luckett isn't well versed in? He's the modern Renaissance man. If you ask me to build anything around the house, you are SOL, my friend. I can't do it. Can't do it. Won't do it. Like Mike Singletary. That's it. I try to be well-rounded here. Utility. I'm like Willie Castro, super utility man over here for KSR. But yeah, I think back to Hudson Brown, back to the lineup. Braxton Van Cleve, Ryan Schwartz, Derek. Those are two, I think, really important individuals here in this last 4 or so weeks of the season. Like, I think if we see Kentucky make the tournament and get in, I think one or both of them has a run here.
Yeah, I mean, Schwartz has ended up in a spot that you never would have thought coming into the year where he's catching. He's fourth string, essentially. Now they've lost Duffy.
We think like Jenkins and Tiger Tyson are like hurt, or do you think it's just Schwartz? Yeah. Okay.
Well, Tiger, I'm not as sure. I think Owen's still definitely battling. He came back for a few games. I think it's probably something they're going to have to deal with. And Schwartz, I think I mentioned it last week. I didn't really see a huge difference. I didn't think in Schwartz and Tyson. I do think if Jenkins was fully healthy, he's who you would want back at catcher. But, Ryan getting a chance to play here, had the double, had the home run last night, drove in a run on Sunday. Trying to get him comfortable. That's another one who I don't want to go back to the pitching staff necessarily because we've talked about it plenty, but any of the promising preseason projections you had for this team likely had Schwartz taking a sophomore jump, or at least, not being what he's pretty much been to this season. He's had a tough year. So he's come up in a role, though, that we didn't expect beyond the plate, and he might be turning it on now, at the dish. So he's had a couple of good games. Van Cleve, that feels like they really need, especially with Hudson out in particular, some people from the left side to emerge. Hansen has been okay. I think he has I don't know what the splits are. It's a little harder to find in college baseball. Feels like he's not great lefty on lefty, but I don't know if the numbers say that necessarily. It's just me thinking about the last couple. He's had a hard time with that front door curveball from lefties. Vanderbilt got him on it, and then he got hit with it last night too. So it's tough at bat for lefties whenever that's coming in there. But Braxton getting a chance there and hitting that home run. This is a guy they clearly liked in the preseason. He came on strong in January, earned his way into the lineup that first weekend. You can see just kind of the easy power with him. Like, this is a very projectable player that you probably feel pretty strongly about. And you change with the data points as they come in, but like, this is to me, a fairly easy projection for next year's team. Like, this is a guy you're going to want in there without even seeing what might happen in the portal or whatnot. Where he plays positionally will be interesting to see because he's really only DH'd. I think he played first, maybe a little bit there. Could be a pathway this year for this team still at this point. You got Will Marcy over there right now, so I'd say nothing's off the table for where Braxton might end up. But to see him come on a little bit, he's a middle of the order bat, maybe trending a little bit towards the bottom of the order is a good spot for him right now. To dig out of the rut that he was in, he's another guy that, kind of got punched in the face this season whenever, you start seeing these college arms, and it's a lot different. He didn't play last year. He didn't play a senior season of high school. So it's been impressive to see what he's done here these last few games. You kind of have a confidence, I think, right now whenever he comes up. And I know this is not an offense that's driven by extra base hits, driven by the long ball, but man, it is nice to have the guy in the lineup that you feel like could leave the park anytime he's up there.
Well, they kind of need it. I just personally think, Derek, when they get in the back half of the lineup, it just really falls off for them. A lot of it's, when we do the end of season recap, I think we're going to talk about, like, obviously Cleaver and the bullpen, but we're also going to talk like the injuries on offense have had a real, I think, impact on this baseball team. you've got guys that just aren't available. Like you mentioned, guy from the left side, Alex Duffy. That was supposed to be him, I think, this year, and just haven't had him. It's a big deal. Tyler Bell missed 14 games. Hudson Brown's now missed 8. Like these are just Owen Jenkins missed a lot. Who's your best catcher? They're just starting to pile up. Like it's just at a certain point you just like that's just hard to overcome when those absences just pile up over a full season. And we're seeing some of that. And I just think like the bottom of the lineup, it's just tough sledding. It just falls off a little bit for them. I mean, not a little bit, a good amount. Which, I like that they're kind of front loading the beginning of the lineup because at least it's just like we got our best bats ready to go here, 1 through 4 or whatever. But it just the injuries. That's where I think injuries on offense have had a real big impact, and I think that's why we're seeing games where they can't get the big hit. And a lot of it, I think, falls on the back end of that lineup. It's just those are the guys coming to bat to me a lot of times with people on.
This transfer class, at least within SEC play, and well, before I get into that, I do want to point out, I wish I would have mentioned him before 45 minutes in. They're getting an fabulous season from Luke Lawrence. Just
he's been
outstanding season. Terrific season. I mean, he's been their best hitter in SEC play. Bell's been good too. He's missed 3 games compared to Luke's. He's posted every day. He's played every game. The transfer class has not quite taken off. Tarnish has been solid. In SEC play, he's been solid. Cerny, he's not had it. He's another guy. We talked about the injuries. Who knows to what effect that had on him. But once SEC play's gotten here, I think he's 2 for 31 at the plate.
As soon as that hamstring injury happened, he hasn't looked the same.
Yeah.
That's not the same player we saw, in my opinion, in February and early March.
A tough break, another one there. Well, because he was someone that he had a track record as a college baseball player that you felt like what you could count on. Even though, there could be a transition going to the SEC, but not to this extent. You just couldn't have predicted that. Campbell was out of the lineup for a while, back in there now. Biggest issue for him is he strikes out a ton and he doesn't really draw walks. So you're in a spot where he's got a good arm in left field, like defensively, he can help, but he's someone that they've tried to get going. He's bounced around in the order, trying to figure out where to play him. And then if you think we already mentioned Duffy, that's kind of like can't even really count that one because he was hurt, and that was one of the bigger additions. Tyson was brought in as depth, so I'm not like gonna that is what it is at that scenario. So internally, I think they did a really nice job for the guys who were here last year. Hudson got better. Luke Lawrence got better. Bell, another guy that's had a hard season to judge. I mean, it sounds like Tyler.
It's hard. How hurt is he? That's what I.
Yeah, that's the hard.
He's having a good season, but it's not. He's not having the superstar season that I think a lot of people projected him to take off. But how much of that is due to just the injury? Because to me, all his power is coming from the right side. It feels like the left side, you're not seeing a ton of power. So maybe that injury has zapped some of that. So it's hard to say, but he makes a difference. Like I'd rather have him in the lineup than not have him, obviously.
Yeah. I wanted to double check this before I said it on the air. Yeah, it was Keith Law on April 9th, who basically reported that he's going to have surgery on that injury, more or less, at some point.
Yeah.
So
it's a legitimate injury.
Schwartz is the one who's not really had the same kind of success year over year that some of those other guys that I just mentioned have, but they've dug through it. I mean, again, we talked about WRC Plus a few weeks ago. I don't love it for college baseball, but I mean, it's a reference point that we're looking at here. Will Marsh is up to 119. That's the 4th best on the team in the SEC, and this is almost all driven by a 26.2% walk percentage. So
gets on base,
yeah. I mean, that's the goal, right? Don't make outs. It's the currency in baseball. You're valuable if you can not make outs, and he's done a really good job of that. Even though he's not, hit the ball great. I think right now you got to play him for sure, and kind of go from there. So Just from kind of doing this exercise talking, like you can definitely find more bright spots right now with the offense and feel like there's still a pathway. We didn't mention Hendel right there, but he's still hanging in there. He's another one who, K rate's high for him, but he leads the team in home runs, with 8.
When he hits it, he hits it.
Yeah, and he can get some extra base hits. He's not really we're not seeing him draw as many walks as, I think is what really makes him a good player. He gets hit by pitches and he draws walks. He's not quite done that as much in SEC play. But still someone who, there's 3 guys. It's been Tarnish, it's been Hendel, and it's been Lawrence, who's been there for every SEC game for them so far. Those are the 3 the 3 regulars. Obviously, Bell and Brown would have been in that group too had it not been for things outside of their control. Well, one of the games was within Tyler's control, the one he got ejected from. But otherwise, the other 2 were injuries. So
yeah, some umpire tomfoolery is what I'll say was going on there over the weekend. We don't have to get into that. I think, Derek, you mentioned just kind of the resume standpoint. I think I look at it like this. You had 3 series against Vanderbilt at home, Missouri at home, South Carolina on the road. You're 2-4 in those games. Like, you looking at that, you wanted to have a winning record. You wanted to gobble up some wins. You really can't afford to lose this series. You lose this series, I think you kind of put your backs against the wall in some tough spots over the last 3 weeks. So that's not something I think you want to have. It's a really important series, I think, for Kentucky to win. I think they just need some confidence. I think the Vanderbilt win was nice, but then you back it up with 3. I would have never guessed that 3 consecutive losses come directly off that moment, but they did. So resume shape, I think this is real important. This is very much it feels like a swing series a lot of ways. They win it, they're probably going to be fine. If they lose it, they could find themselves in a tough spot here when we get into the last week of the season.
I use the phrase a crossroads. And I think it's a fair thing to say. They're in a spot where they can absolutely still make a regional. Like we said earlier, metrically right now it looks good. I will say, and I don't know how good Warren Nolan's predictive measurements are. As of now, he has them finishing 12-18 with a 51 RPI. That's not going to be good enough, I don't think, to get into the tournament. And again, I don't know if this is like Ken Palm level, Torvik level for like college basketball or SP plus for college football. I've never really used it, so I have no idea if it's how accurate he is. But he does have a great resource for college baseball fans if you want to view that. And what's interesting, Luckett, I think like definitely still a path to get there. Something I wouldn't have thought I've been saying before the season, but like there's a path to like comfortably miss the tournament as well at this point, kind of depending on what happens. If they lose 2 here, you're pretty much in a spot. Let's say they lost 2 out of 3, it'd be 9-12 at that point, and just winning 1 game a series wouldn't be enough the rest of the way. I don't think they get in at 12 wins. So, and that wouldn't be missing comfortably, but you see what I'm saying. If there's a sweep somewhere in there, somewhere else, like you're really, really in trouble. So huge game Friday with Jelkin on the mound. He needed to win that one, but I know South Carolina's not great, but man, they've been kind of punchy against some teams. And again, it's not a place where Kentucky's typically played great. They've had some good moments under Mingione down there. His first season was really good. I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago on a pod. So we'll have to see. I mean, this will go a long way though this week, because it was 4 quad 2 games coming in, right? Like 4 quad 2 games. One's against your rival, 3 are on the road. All 4 games are on the road, so it wasn't going to be easy. Having to pack up and head out. And if there was a world where they're able to come through with a sweep, then because that's what happened last year. The Oklahoma series, like things were kind of like this last year, where it was like, man, you don't really know what direction this is going to go. They sweep Oklahoma the next final weekend of SEC play, and it's like, all right, like they're good to go. And it turned out that they were, because they didn't win a game after that. Actually, I don't think, if I'm remembering this right, they got swept by Vanderbilt the next weekend and then lost to Oklahoma in the SEC tournament, and they were still good to go. So not quite to that level, but I guess what I'm saying is that sweep paid off at a time you didn't think it was right. 2023 against South Carolina at home. It was kind of the same deal where they played really well, put themselves in a good spot, but it was like there was still work to be done. Swept South Carolina that year, really kind of solidified their standing, got them going back. So it's just an interesting kind of difference to me where metrically you can easily see a path for this team, but it's like the on-field product, I think you feel a little bit worse about. Like it's just a little harder to see a path with this pitching situation and just kind of the instability of the offense. But again, I think they can come up with enough runs. It's just going to be,
can they get 27 outs? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you get a game outside of Jelkin where you hold them to like 4 runs? Like
right.
You just give your offense a little bit of a cushion there to not have to be trying to put up double digits to survive one of these games.
Yep. And we'll get our answers starting this weekend down there in Columbia. South Carolina interim head coach. So they've already made a change. They've got a losing record overall and in SEC play. So you gotta, they need some wins. This would be a good place to start, specifically before a big home series against Tennessee next weekend to start the final 3-week push. And we'll know a little bit more about where Kentucky is and where that resume is trending and what will be needed over those last 3 weeks next week here on Pump It Up. But for Derek Terry, this is Adam Luckett. It was a pleasure talking some baseball with you fine folks tonight, and we'll do it again soon.